This week's episode of Still Untitled, The Adam Savage Project, is brought to you by Wix.com. Do you need a website? Why not do it yourself with Wix.com? No matter what business you're in, you can get your site live today with hundreds of templates and easy drag and drop features. It's simple to customize and there is no coding needed. You don't need to be a programmer or designer to create something beautiful. Go to Wix.com and create your own stunning website today. It's easy and free.
So given that we'll probably run this before this podcast,
yes.
I want to point out that I want to address that YouTube post
Yes.
that you mentioned to me, that you sent to me recently, which is we're often talking about movies on this podcast. And whenever we do, we say spoiler alert. And I then will frequently make a joke from The Simpsons about the crying game. I'm not going to make that joke here because a YouTube user allowed that was potentially offensive, and actually offensive, because the joke is making an assumption about the gender of transgender people being something or the other. And while I've always laughed at that joke simply because it demonstrates someone being bullheaded and stupid, I didn't realize that by making
About spoilers, just to be clear, not about being transgendered.
Right. I was actually being pig-headed and stupid about transgender people. And to that YouTube user, I want to say I apologize profusely. I agree with you that it was insensitive, and I won't make that joke again.
So let's spoil a movie.
Let's start
welcome to Still Untitled, The Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
That might be the longest pre-roll we've had on this podcast.
That is quite the epic discussion. The thing that freaked me out about Inside Out.
Yeah.
I might put that at the end, actually, because we have spoilers for a movie that we didn't warn people there are going to be spoilers for. And they'll probably be upset because it's still in theaters. Anyway, the different emotions are the lead drivers for different people. The dad is anger, the mom is sadness, the little girl is joy.
And that's what we all have, and our own different versions of.
Right. Every inching toward rage and serenity is where I go. Anyway, we saw The Martian last night.
Holy cow.
Our long national nightmare is over.
We got to see a preview screening here in San Francisco of the 20th Century Fox film,
Yes,
The Martian. Ridley Scott directed, starring Matt Damon, Donald Glover, Jessica Chastain, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Kate Mara. Oh my God, the cast is fantastic. Kristen Wiig. The cast is phenomenal. The script is from a book that we are completely besotted with, The Martian by Andy Weir.
And the script written by Drew Goddard.
One of our favorite Hollywood writers, Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
And I mean,
a really good adaptation of a challenging piece of work.
Yes.
A love letter to science, and directed by legendary filmmaker Ridley Scott. So.
And it's Ridley has directed some of the most important special effects science fiction films in film history. And the first thing I'm going to say is The Martian belongs in that pantheon.
It's early to judge.
I agree.
I enjoyed the film immensely.
I really did.
It was what I, as somebody who was a fan of the book, it was exactly what I wanted. I don't know how well it stands for somebody who hasn't read the book.
Well, so let's start. This is a spoiler cast.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just gonna.
We like the movie.
Yeah.
We love the movie. We told you to watch it last week,
and we're still saying, go watch.
Watch it.
I think we can talk about some vague generalialities without spoiling things.
All right.
First.
So we're gonna start out by doing some.
Non-spoilery,
and then we'll get to spoilers.
Can we talk about the spacesuits a little bit?
Yeah.
First off, in the film they showed the heads-up display that shows like the PSI and everything like that. And they got the right PSI for the suits.
Yeah.
Because the current suits that they use on the space station usually around 4 PSI. It's real low by our standards. That's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of attention to detail. The suits seem to be based on the kind of skin suits
that Java,
is working on.
Which is when you look at the screenshots and the photos, the production stills from the movie, the spacesuits were made by the same company who made the Prometheus spacesuits.
This is FBFX out of London.
Right. And so you have the big dome, and so they look, from one sense, they look like very Hollywood science fiction spacesuits, not like at all the EVA suits, EMUs.
Although the EVA suits,
exactly. So the point is that it makes sense for a mission on Mars to have different suits that you would have for an EVA mission and that you would have for on the land mission. Mobility is different because you have different pressures, different atmosphere, different gravity. You actually have gravity,
and you actually have a minor atmosphere, which means you are, I believe, more protected from micrometeorites. Which is one of the reasons for all the layers, many, many, many layers of beta cloth on the EMU suits.
Right.
And so something that wasn't even addressed in the book, but the production took into account is to have two different suits. One for when you're in the Hermes and taking up the MAV, but also one for, which is the majority of film, the beautiful orange spacesuit, which is the Ares mission suit.
Well, and so one of the things we loved about the book is totally extant in the film, which is scientific rigor.
Yes.
This film was clearly made in deep cooperation with NASA, and I believe I've been reading NASA scientists super excited about the film, not just excited about seeing it, excited about having seen it and seen how closely it hews to reality, the reality of what's possible, even with slight leaps into the future.
I mean, if anything, the big leap is the thing that happens in the opening scene of the film, which is the windstorm. The atmospheric and Andy Weir admits this as well. The atmospheric pressure on Mars probably not high enough to have the kind of windstorm that's going to cause the kind of damage that caused the accident, left him stranded in the first place. After that, though,
you do something from a dramatic standpoint. When you're reading the book, we love The Martian because it is an exercise in solving one problem after another, and to get that type of thing across in under a 2-hour film is difficult. And while there are montage sequences of problem solving, the Ridley and the writer does allow Matt Damon to verbalize and give you enough science. So even if you didn't read the book, you get the sense that he's doing the math, and it's not just spewing nonsense. It's real math, real problem solving.
Yeah. But I hesitate. Like, this isn't a science movie, right? I mean, it is a science movie, but it stands alone. The science is what makes it plausible and believable and gives it weight that makes it feel like the greatest adventure story of mankind's ever had, rather than, a science fiction like tale of survival. Right, like there's a difference between a movie like Wild, which is about a harrowing human story, and the pulpy kind of tales of survival from the 50s. You know what I mean? And this feels more like something that is real, that could happen to a real person.
Yeah, it's than straight up science fiction.
Yeah,
in the fantasy sense.
I mean, that was the appeal of the book to me.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
It's the human. The problem solving is a big part of it from an intellectual standpoint, and then from an emotional standpoint, one of the reasons you connect not only with Mark Watney, but also the people of Earth, all of the people of Earth rallying behind him, is what connection means.
It's also that there's the character. It's a terrific character, Watney. He's a specialist, but not a super specialist. He knows a little bit about a lot of things. He is, as Raymond Chandler would say about the proper hero of a story, it wouldn't be an adventure if it did not happen to someone fit for adventure. And Watney is so ready for this challenge. Even he doesn't realize how ready he is. I said this on the podcast before, but Chris Hadfield said there is no other fictional telling of space stuff that gets so perfectly the mind of an astronaut.
Right. The determination, which ends up being the theme of the movie. We'll get to that in a little bit. But from an adaptation standpoint, because it's not just internal monologue, which the book is, it's the format. It's the
book is
audio
all
logs,
data entries.
Entries and verbalization. What you get from film is the visual aspect. And so you have just 5 seconds of quiet determination in his eyes, which then can you don't need to expound, a full chapter of the problem solving. You can just see it, which is a testament to the acting.
That's something I really, really liked. I was 5 minutes into the movie. I was like, we're not watching any of his data entries, or they're very truncated. Of course, it's film. Show, don't tell.
Exactly. Yeah, where exposition works in book and in film, the exposition actually kind of stands out as like, oh, okay, this need to be.
Facts.
We're hearing things. We're hearing Lewis tell their situation. Okay, this makes a lot of sense in the books, but just show it.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting, just from a technical standpoint, is it seemed like they use diegetic cameras a lot. And I'm not sure if that's the right term for this. That diegetic might only apply to audio, but the cameras that exist in the universe, in the world, either as the things that he's using the console with, the gimbal-mounted shoulder camera on the spacesuit, or presumably something facing the inside of his suit.
I was a little afraid because I don't know, for people who like it's a mass market movie. The way they filmed it, because they use like the in situ cameras, it almost evoked it from filmmaking sense like a horror movie. And
there's a little bit of that, because that horror movies have made extensive use of those kind of found footage type of assemblage.
Right. Yeah. And that, like, the scenes where he's just like hearing outside of Mars and the environment.
Right.
Like, it goes, of course, it never becomes a horror movie, but it was interesting that you could still evoke those things.
And there is not Jeff Daniels is also in the film. There's not a bad performance in the whole film. I mean, everybody...
I would say he was probably the worst.
He's wooden, but I mean he's the director of NASA.
Supposed to be
he's a
wooden.
Lifetime bureaucrat. I think he's supposed to be.
We know Jeff Daniels has range at this point. If he doesn't show range, it's because it's intentional.
It's not Dumb and Dumber.
And I think we're going to start to move into spoilers.
I think this is the time.
They have a tremendous amount of storytelling to do, and when you hire really great actors, they do a huge amount of your storytelling for you by imbuing their character with traits that make the script move much faster.
So Donald Glover is the one I was going to say.
Don Glover's characterization of Rick Purcell,
Rich Purcell
is really, really. He creates a very, very distinct character instantly.
Right. And it's borderline caricature, and it's a fine line.
Well, my son was like, I bet you didn't like that because there's another character from another film we had seen that I didn't like, that kind of characterization that's sort of over the top. I'm a genius, but can't tie my shoes.
Are you talking about Scott Pilgrim?
No.
Okay.
But at the same time, I thought Don Glover's, which is so hard for me to say Don Glover without thinking Dong Lover.
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover.
You can just buy his musician name.
Yeah, Childish Gambino.
Do you know that Childish Gambino said that he was 18 before he realized that his name was Dong Lover?
So my wife didn't realize she didn't make the connection.
That was
Donald Glover.
Oh.
And she was like, He's one of the coolest people on the planet.
Yeah.
How can he not?
Okay,
how does he play this?
So I think maybe less so because
this is spoilers.
Let's move into
spoilers now.
Territory.
If you haven't seen it, go see the movie. It's in theaters. It's worth your $15. Go.
We should really
enjoy
it. Let's talk about characterization.
Do you think people should see the 3D?
Yes. Okay. We talk about a lot of things. 3D. I actually thought it was a fine 3D movie.
I thought it was a fine 3D. I'm not a fan of 3D films. Yeah. And I agree with you. The 3D was very subtle. There wasn't a lot of arrows shooting right into your face, kind of.
There was no
filmed
steering wheel
in 3D, and the ways they use 3D, and we've talked about things we like about how you use 3D, is the framing of the cinema, using a UI as the thing that pops out. Or when you're filming a landscape, the landscape goes inward as opposed to popping out. So those are effective.
Some of the Martian landscapes were just absolutely gorgeous in 3D. I think you're okay if you want to see this not in 3D.
I think you're totally fine. In fact, actually, I think the Mars is a character in this film.
Mars is the villain. Mars is the antagonist.
And yet, I don't think of it as totally antagonistic. It's unfriendly, but it doesn't mean ill.
And he finds a bond with it.
And I think it might be one of the most fully realized planets done in a science fiction film. Mm-hmm. You really get to see lots of Mars in this movie, and you really start to feel like you're part of the landscape.
It reminded me more of... I think I heard somebody knocking. Hold on.
I think Adam's right. Mars, I don't think, is an antagonist in a traditional sense. It is the obstacle. It is the thing he has to overcome.
It's the Everest.
But it is a character, absolutely, in that the bond he forms with the planet. And not just Mars, but then all the technology around it, the rover, the HAB, his last day at the HAB, which you get in the book, long paragraphs about, I spent so many days here, kept me alive. I have this bond with this thing, and now I'm finally leaving it. It's wistful. You get that not said out loud, but again, shown.
The thing that I thought that the screenplay did, and probably Ridley in the screenplay, everyone involved most likely, was condensed incredible amounts of information into very brief scenes, like the scene with Donald Glover where he where he sets up Kristen Wiig on one side and
Jeff Daniels
on the other side, and illustrates the
gravity assist
slingshot in about a minute and a half, maybe. That was a 3-chapter explanation in the book, probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
And little things like, to tip the hat to book readers, things like why he had potatoes, don't open until Thanksgiving.
Right.
Just being written on the package. He needed to say, oh, now this is why we had live spuds. Right. I will say for the Mars thing, and going back to the in situ cameras, Joey pointed this out when I was chatting with him last night. When they filmed on Earth and interior, it looked like they lowered the shutter, so you have your typical 48 shutter, 24 FPS, a little filmic look. But anytime you moved outdoors onto the Martian landscape, they ramped up the shutter so it looked more like fast motion,
interesting,
crisper movement
to give you just a difference in the environments.
Yep.
Sort of a visceral feel for that.
and you notice that especially in these sandstorms because there's not a lot of motion blur. You see all of those particulates.
That was the particulates. Ridley has a very, very well burned in crew. Costumes were done by the inimitable and amazing Janty Yates, who did both Gladiator, Prometheus, and a million other Ridley Scott films. His effects crew is just par excellence, man. They from flying cork and vermiculite for the dust storm to the stuff that they do, it's just beautiful. Watney repairing,
oh my God,
his puncture wound, absolutely as real as anything I've ever seen.
And the shot that they did with the mirror, so you think, I'm not going to have to look at it. I'm not going to have to. Outstanding.
Yeah. And you think about, when you have 120 minutes for a movie, and you got to condense a book that could go 6 hours long, if you're telling it that way, what you choose to linger on is important. And so choosing to have that moment of brutal survival in the very human and visceral sense, and then having the body transformation, which you kind of get that he over time with the rationing gets weakened, but then getting a body double for Matt Damon.
Yeah, they did a beautiful job with that body double.
Yeah.
So if you have read the book, you should be aware that only about half of the things that happen in the book are in the movie. Mm-hmm. And they do some fairly impressive streamlining.
Yes.
That being said, the one thing that I thought about the movie that was a little bit of a problem was there were times when people were just talking so fast to get through the storytelling. And I find myself looking forward to a DVD release where there's perhaps a longer cut that really has some breathing room, because I think this movie could go to 2.5 hours without much difficulty, and some of these scenes would have a little more space around them. And again, that being said, Ridley really does take time to give you these quiet moments of solitude and contemplation,
frustration,
and frustration for Matt Damon's character.
That was the thing to me that they captured really, really well with the film, was the kind of the hard swings that were from the book, because the book was written one chapter at a time, cliffhanger endings on more or less every chapter, and you'd have hard swings from a real low point on Earth where everybody's like, oh man, that guy's going to totally die, to Watney, what's his reaction, what's his mind state right now, and then it cuts to him listening to disco and cursing at the commander of the mission who brought all the disco with him.
It's supposed to be over years. He's there, well over a year, and so to condense
days.
that to 2.5 hours to just scenes, to a couple of dozen scenes of him on Mars, you need to have a good cadence of his emotions.
And so they get rid of a couple of the big complications in the book as he's heading towards Schiaparelli crater. He encounters a dust storm, which takes him 3 days to diagnose and then several more days to get out of. And then actually, as he enters the crater at the end, his vehicle rolls over and yet somehow still doesn't get fully
And it's a double vehicle. He does the convoy system in the book, which he doesn't. But the things that they kept really is just like not only love letter to science, but also the book, talking about the meeting, the Elron, Project Elron, like which didn't need to be in the movie, but it is a nod.
Was that in the book?
It was.
Totally.
Okay.
And what's hilarious about them calling the secret, so this is Rich Purcell figuring out the gravity assist sling on his own, and when he gathers people to talk about it, he calls it Project Elron because it's a nod to Fellowship of the Ring, in which they decide to sort. And the joke is that one of the actors who plays
Kristen
the
Wiig.
mission commander is Sean Bean.
That's the joke. I didn't realize that. That's great.
Didn't even occur to me.
Yeah,
it's
Mitch is Sean
Boromir.
Bean. He's Boromir. Oh my
Sorry,
goodness.
I didn't mean to yell. That was
that's
Boromir.
great.
That's why I was
Oh, my
laughing so
goodness.
hysterically.
I just kept waiting for Sean Bean to get his head lopped off, frankly.
Yeah, and Will points out that the point of that that
Mission director,
sequence,
sorry.
Yeah.
in the book and essentially in the film, is not for Sean Bean and for Jeff Daniels and Venkat Kapoor and those characters, but it's for the benefit of Kristen Wiig to show that how she is it's more
She's
of
the
a reflection
audience.
of her character and how she is not the nerds like them.
And Kristen Wiig is great. She has about 6 lines in the film. And luckily, the first one is, "Are you shitting me?"
It was.
She gets Annie right, and they didn't need to caricature her.
Yeah.
Right. So there were a lot of loving nods. I feel like the screen in the back of Donald Glover's computer, on Rich Parnell's computer, when he's doing the initial calculation in his office, I'm pretty sure that was Andy's simulation, the one that he did to figure out the orbital mechanics.
That's very nice.
Oh, you're probably totally right.
That'd be great.
I mean, it was very similar to it if it wasn't it.
I did laugh at there is a point in the movie in which he figures it out and this thing comes up on his screen that says calculations correct.
Oh, there were so many of those.
And he's plugging in his USB on the server room, and so he's huddled by the server computer.
Right.
I don't know. Is anyone at JPL? Do you actually do that?
Sorry, you guys don't have networks.
Is there anyone in Astrodynamics who has a giant chalkboard in the room where in the bottom corner you write "science!" exclamation mark? Like,
I'll bet
Probably,
that's true.
yeah.
I'll bet that comes from actual research.
The Rich
Tell us, Bobak.
Parnell is a steely-eyed rocket man. That
tell
got
you,
a big laugh.
One of the things about Janty Yates, the costume designer that I know, is that she rigorously researches every last thing to the point of on Gladiator, couldn't find Roman examples of heels in shoes, so she didn't put heels on the shoes of any of the actors, which was really rough on the stuntmen because it started hurting their back.
Yeah.
So suffice to say, I think Ridley's crew researches incredibly rigorously.
I would say that for her job as a costume designer, great job making NASA and astronauts so fashionable. Those sweaters, and I said this when the first trailer came out, I want every piece of clothing.
Big neck sweater that Voight is wearing on the spaceship.
All of them.
Looks so good.
The jumpsuits,
guys. Also, Johnson Space Center.
Johnson Space Center is gorgeous.
Doesn't look anywhere near that cool
fancy
in real life.
I whistled
there's
when I
no
saw it,
space. You're right.
And I will
laughed.
say the one nod to science fiction movies is the Hermes, which is the vehicle they go to get to Mars in. It's just a large combination standard ship, but with a rotational aspect, which is really important for its.
We talked about this when we did the Hadfield videos.
Right. So it's the rooms on the Hermes.
So spacious.
Ridiculously spacious.
So spacious.
There's just never going to be rooms that big in space until we're living there
with
large
fancy
populations.
chairs. But they did get right, and I know there's a complaint of gravity, because they had both zero-G elements in the Hermes, which the wire work is as it is. There's only so much you can do to simulate gravity without actually shooting in low Earth orbit. They had all the long hair pulled back, so you didn't have the bad non-floating hair.
That's the way
That's
astronauts
and
do in
in
space.
gravity. the hair when she first gets on the space station. It does not go out. And that was a big complaint that people had about the bad science of gravity. And so they had Jessica Chastain's hair down when they were in the we'll call it the banana, because just like Seven Eves, that was the banana.
Yeah.
And then up when they were in the zero G parts.
Looking at the way they shot those scenes, specifically in the centripetal ring like thing, it made me appreciate how disconcerting it would be to be in one of those rooms. I hadn't really thought about it much, but it would be like all your frame of reference rotating outside you constantly, not in a way that is down, would make you take some adjustment.
And a beautiful shot of Kate Mara spinning around I'll call it the Taurus. Yeah. When Beck is receiving the resupply mission.
One of the things that Ridley Scott is so amazing at is what's called framing. Which is telling you the important elements of the story in every shot. What characters are in danger, what characters are thinking, where they are within the narrative, but also where you are in space. And there are few directors as good as Ridley Scott at doing that. So outside the windows, there's always something. It's not just interesting shit going on outside the windows for interesting's sake. It's, I know where I am in Mars, in the spaceship, on Earth, shot to shot. I'm never abandoned.
Points of reference?
Like Michael Bay, where it's like we shot with 60 cameras and we're using all of them in every shot.
Spatial awareness. Basics. I mean, even great directors like Chris Nolan don't always get action scenes right with the spatial awareness.
This movie didn't have a ton of action scenes, though.
So can we talk about issues we had with the movie? Should we?
Absolutely. But
of course.
I wanted to talk about, there was one more thing, and I don't remember what it was, so I'll bring it up later if I remember.
Norm, issues you had with the movie.
You're grumpy Norm.
I definitely had some issues with the movie. And, it's not beef with the movie. It's beef because we only get one movie, one adaptation. Yes. And you reading the book, you have the images in your head that you want. And so every decision made, if not the decision you had in your head, is in some sense is a disappointment.
Right.
Which isn't to say it's a bad movie. It's a great movie. So if you listen to like the spoiler cast we did of the book and talking about how our hopes and dreams and fears for the adaptation of the movie, one of the hopes I had was that on their approach to Earth, they would, for the crew of the Hermes, show what it was they were giving up, the extra 500 days. And they tried to do that with the telecommunications, the voice chats with family back on Earth, but we never got that. We're approaching the Earth shot. This is our home and what home is.
Right.
And now we're going far away. It could be the last time we're going away. We're so close to coming home, but what we're sacrificing is all this connection with our friends and family and of humanity to rescue the guy we left behind. Which again, it's not a bad thing they admitted it. It's just what I'd hoped.
I mean, I thought that the overall, the passage of time in the back half of the movie, kind of things went fast. I mean, I realized that there was probably a lot for Watney. There was a lot of sitting around the hab, eating a half a potato a day and whatever it was that he was eating.
I was waiting for some line about how much he hated potatoes.
Right. Or
the
space
ketchup
coffee.
line was pretty good.
Yeah, ketchup thing
line was pretty good.
But like nothing like, okay, what's Mars coffee? Well, it's just hot water and caffeine, and then it's weak coffee with tea.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff. The pirate ninja bit was all
sad.
gone.
So the pirate ninja bit is one of my favorite parts of the book, in which he needs to figure out watt hours per day.
Yeah.
And that phrase is too laborious for him to keep writing, so he just decides to shorten it to pirate ninjas.
Yeah.
You get space pirate, which is nice, great and funny, and also communicates how long he's been away from Earth.
Yeah.
It may be getting to him a little bit, even though that's also his personality. The biggest, I will actually call this real beef with the movie, in terms of changes and decisions made, was making Lewis the one to rescue him.
I found that, I
Really?
agreed.
And I know they needed the connection of her guilt, and she was one who left them behind, so she wanted to take responsibility, but it was so overwrought. Whereas the soundtrack for all these montage sequences and the build-ups were the disco music, this was a time when they really brought out the orchestral score of the coiling of the cables.
I know, but
and
let me
go ahead.
Let me say this. Drew Goddard is one of the best screenwriters going right now. My guess is that the first draft of this didn't have that, or at least the first treatment had it following at the book. And when they looked at this character breakdown and they realized we've got this large crew, we can't tell all their stories. We can't really tell the story about the affair. We can kind of tease to it. Watney's knowing we're going to have to we have to start mercilessly slicing stuff out. And when we do that, we end up in danger. I'm saying we, the royal we of, I'm trying to put myself in Drew's head. We still need things for the audience to connect to. And Lewis's guilt over leaving Watney is actually, I think, one of the more difficult things to communicate, because none of us are mission commanders, right? And in order to make that a real plot point, you need to also give it a resolution. Now, I think that it is a very reasonable plot choice to make, even though it is overwrought. Again, I remember we're sullied by having read and loved the book with all of its luxurious time for laying out a story.
Well, nuance, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they have a very short time to solve those problems. So I don't have any. I think that that's a very natural decision to make.
Absolutely. It's understandable.
Gina and I talked about this last night, too. The other thing is, in the book, she's directly involved. Like it's really clear that everyone on the ship is involved with the rescue attempt, right? And that she's helping. I can't remember who was out in the suit in the book, but helping with the feeding course corrections and all that kind of stuff to make the rescue happen. Yeah. And you lose all of that because it's just math that's going to get cut from the film. Yeah. So if you want her to be the driving force, she has to be in the suit.
And I thought that, to be honest, that rescue of him getting tangled up in her web from the ship, the 600-meter webbing, and them spinning around each other was absolutely beautiful. I was really blown away by that.
Really? The whole Iron Man bit from Iron Man on was the only place the movie lost me.
And I felt like, because you had a whole movie of build up, and I get from a plot point that, okay, after 500 days of intense survival, this is the last thing, and there's still problems. You got to solve things on the spot. It was also a great moment, because you had the 12-minute delay to Earth, to use that to cut in the Truman Show. Of humanity coming together, and you had,
they did
there was Times Square and the cheering, but not like the looking up at the bars.
I actually, it's funny that you say that. I also felt that they left a little bit of drama on the table there. The other place I felt that drama was left on the table was in Watney's first hearing of Commander Lewis's voice in his comm.
I thought
they didn't quite make it clear that was the first time he was hearing her. We were just hearing her, and then we cut to him. And to me, that's a moment to go to him of like switching a switch and hearing her voice and hearing the first human voice he's heard in 580 days.
He's an astronaut,
right?
Adam.
Well, you get a little.
He had a job to do then.
Yes.
Still,
I mean,
I'm serious.
I agree with you.
But the moment they caught that was when he's face to face with her in the suit.
Yeah,
and you think he's just going to say, "Oh my God, I never thought I was going to see another human again." And he said, "You have terrible taste in music," and it was one of the biggest laughs in the whole movie.
You do also get that when he first gets connection back to NASA with a Pathfinder, and that look on his face, that communication is happening. That connection is really.
There's one joke I was sad. A couple of dirty jokes to talk about. One is that he hadn't showered in over a year when they got him, and he goes, "What is this line he says in the book? Apparently, I smell like a skunk took a shit in a pair of sweat socks."
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
The other thing is that now we're going to actually say some curses here. So, kids, stop listening.
Are you going to talk about the fuck montage?
Yeah. So the thing is that in a PG-13 movie, you're only allowed, apparently by the MPAA, to say fuck once.
Allegedly.
Now, there are movies that make great use of this single usage case. Probably the greatest ever is Ron Burgundy, in which Ron Burgundy is tricked into reading the teleprompter and saying, "Fuck you, San Diego." And it is the hinge of the plot of the film.
It's the beginning of his downfall.
It is. Yeah. And it's the most important moment in the film. And it's a perfect use of one-time use by the MPAA. Given that in the book, Watney curses almost constantly. And the opening line is, "Well, I'm pretty much fucked."
Yeah.
You're wondering, how are they going to do this? And I posited with Andy that it was going to be the first line of the film, which it might have been in an early draft, but it turns out to be the first word you hear Watney actually say.
No.
He has a communication with...
Because he has all the chatter. in that opening sequence when he's out doing those soil samples.
After the disaster.
It's after the disaster.
Right. Post-disaster.
Which was also, that was a great place to put the title card, The Martian.
Yeah.
When you showed him buried in the sand and everyone's gone, he's deserted.
Is that where they put the title card?
It's not.
Oh.
They put it before the sandstorm. So a little editing make things. Also,
that might change between now and when it comes out also.
And they changed his name to Vincent.
Who?
Venkat Kapoor was Indian, and they changed it to Vincent Kapoor.
And then Mindy Park, they kept her name, but then brought in the actress from *Halt and Catch Fire*, who I like a lot.
I thought she was great.
She was great.
She was terrific.
I just like weird casting things. The one final thing, I think the really big differentiation from the book. I mean, you can take out plot points, but what a movie adds to a book when there's already so much material to a book says a lot about what the filmmaker wants to do and what the writers want to do. And you got an epilogue with the movie that was never in the book. In the book, you have this Apollo 13 moment almost where they're rescued, NASA cheers, and then you have the final log of Mark Watney, which is the monologue, where he talks about humans coming together and why he thinks he was rescued. It's ostensibly the theme of the book, not just survival, but human connection and what NASA and space exploration means. That monologue is in the trailer. It's the opening line of the trailer, the first trailer, where he talks about in every culture. And it is in the script, but it's not in the movie. They cut it out. And instead, they give you this epilogue where he's back on Earth. He has actual physical touching of the ground, a recollection of the plant growing. And he's a teacher now. He's teaching a new astronaut corps, apparently at the new Avengers recruiting station or something with them running. And he does a monologue there, which is about problem solving and the difficulties of surviving in space, which I think was not as good a substitute for the original monologue.
That's the kind of thing that I find it difficult to judge because I have really strong feelings about the way the book ended. I felt like the book kind of just trailed. It was such a hard stop after such a delightfully paced path that I needed something.
Yeah.
I don't know that what they tacked on is great. But I was not unhappy with it.
One way to,
and it was nice to see him back on Earth.
I'm gonna fan edit this. You take the dialogue from the trailer, which is about survival.
Norm, go right ahead.
And then when he goes into the classroom and he's talking to the new class, you fade out the audio and then you give him that speech and then use that as a montage to where the people who helped him survive are. And then that's where you get.
That's probably better. Yeah, I'd watch that.
I expect to see it.
Let's fan
okay.
DVD comes out.
A few more things. The guy who's the head of JPL, Bruce Eng.
Wonderful.
Oh my God.
So good.
Benedict Wong, he's in like 2 other space movies. He was in Prometheus and he was in Sunshine.
Was he one of the botanists or something in Prometheus?
In Prometheus, he was the pilot that along with Stringer Bell makes the bet. And maybe not Stringer Bell, but they the one they decided to crash the ship.
Right.
And then in Sunshine, he was the astronaut who makes the math mistake that gets them all basically killed.
Sunshine.
And he
watched the first 2/3 of Sunshine.
He was terrific.
Oh my God.
Some of the biggest laughs in so it's a really funny movie. We didn't say this up front, but we should have.
The book is hugely hilarious, and the movie retains that deep sense of humor, even gallows humor. That the book had, and that's the audience we saw it with was laughing uproariously through many, many, many parts of the movie.
Yeah, the his overall performance was really delightful. Matt Damon is incredible.
Matt Damon is wonderful and dynamic and perfect casting for Watney.
And carries. I mean, the movie doesn't work if he isn't able to convey 4 emotions simultaneously in almost every scene, ranging from exhaustion to frustration to anger to fear. And he did a really lovely job with it. The scene where he sends the message to Lewis I don't think he's actually sending the message to Lewis while he's sitting looking over the hill, but he sends the message to Lewis and asks her to go talk to his parents if he doesn't make it. Is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's like the NASA mission. I mean, any astronaut would say the same.
Exactly. In fact, somebody would have already been assigned at NASA
they would have already happened
to be the liaison to the family for the astronaut who's up in space.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was lovely.
I found it incredibly moving, really, really exciting, and I can't imagine the mixture of emotions that Andy Weir is going through.
Oh, I mean,
1 year. It was almost a year ago that I interviewed him on the Talking Room, and they had just started principal photography in Budapest. and now this movie is out. That seems like a crazy amount of time. I can't believe that it can be done.
It's really good. I mean, it has the visual style of the Ridley Scott movies that we've all loved. That may or may not have been great films on their own, but I thought this was absolutely lovely and highly recommend it.
And yes, the spacesuits completely obsess me. I want to make one. I need to make one.
Yeah, get that fancy new GoPro.
I got to get that. GoPro must be very pleased with their treatment in that film.
Samsung and GoPro. That's the only two I saw.
Absolutely.
The future looks good. I want to go to Mars, man.
The future's so bright, we have to wear shades.
Yeah. That'll do it for us. I think this is probably, the last time we'll probably talk about The Martian on the podcast.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
it's closure.
No, once the Blu-ray DVD comes out, there'll be all these extra materials to go over.
Okay.
Someone's making a spacesuit, I bet.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna, okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind. Sorry, guys. I thought you were done.
Nope. Nope.
Thank you guys for listening. We have a live event coming up at the end of this month in San Francisco. Go to testedtheshow.eventbrite.com and you can get tickets and come. We also have another event at the end of the month on October 27th. Adam, Norm, and I are going to Alcatraz. We're going to podcast on The Rock.
On the Gentlemen, Welcome to the Rock.
I think we'll talk about your swim.
My swim, yes.
Maybe Michael Bay's finest film.
I actually probably agree with that.
Well, let's save that.
A lot of early Michael Bay is absolutely wonderful.
Michael Bay's second or third best film, and a bunch of other stuff as well. See you guys next time. I guess that's it. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Oh, hey, there's more stuff about Inside Out after this, so stay after the ad and you get some Inside Out business.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Today's episode was brought to you by Wix.com. Used by 60 million people throughout the world, Wix.com empowers business owners to create their own professional websites. With drag and drop builder and hundreds of designer-made templates to choose from, you can get your website live today. It's easy and free. Go to Wix.com and create your own stunning website today.
When we were talking about Inside Out last time, the thing that stuck with me is that movie is such a weird head trip about, and it is about inside your head, about determinism. Because those characters have zero agency.
Oh, yeah.
The main characters. They think they do.
Right.
But they are just manifestations of the human actor. I mean, you can think of it two different ways. You can think of it as the little girl has no agency.
That's the way I thought of it.
Which is...
Actually, even further than that, it was occurring to me that from a Buddhist perspective, your emotional landscape is only part of the mental landscape. It's not necessarily the most important one. And in fact, one of the things that I have learned at any given point in any of our lives, we can have really difficult times where we feel emotionally in crisis. And when you feel emotionally in crisis, the thing that helps me from a Buddhist perspective is to realize I am not in physical danger. My brain and my emotions actually, I'm responding from a place of feeling like I might be in physical danger, but I'm not.
So an intellectual part. You just came up with the sequel to Inside Out, where headquarters meets other headquarters.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I thought would have been an amazing reveal in Inside Out would be the realization that there's this entire other landscape. Right?
You're talking about an 11-year-old.
I realize that, but there's an old Mel Brooks joke. Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner used to have a party joke that they would do called The 2,000-Year-Old Man, where Carl Reiner would interview Mel Brooks. It became a couple of comedy albums that I grew up on. And at one point, Carl Reiner says, did you always believe in God? He goes, no. What did you believe in before God? Well, we used to believe in Phil. What, really? Yeah. Well, who was Phil? Phil was a very big man. He would beat you up, right? He says, so one day, Phil was out walking and the clouds formed and lightning bolt came down and struck Phil. And we all looked up and we said, there's something bigger than Phil.
The other thing that Danica actually brought up, and I didn't know if anyone had written about this before, is, when you go into the mind of the mom and the mind of the dad and other characters, they're all... like one gender. So the mom, inside the mom's mind, all the versions of the emotions are the female versions. In the dad's, it's all male, and the boys, it's all male.
And for lots of people, you would have many crossovers in that front.
And so, But in Riley, the main character, the little girl, it's a mix. So what is that? Is that Pixar's way of saying that she's still developing?
I think so. I think that's a really lovely way of saying that.